are you?
We are Venom.
Greetings and salutations, friends and gamers of all stripes. My name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, and let me tell you, it is good to be back. I want to apologize for the lack of uploads over this past week. For those of you who weren't aware, who didn't see my posts on either Facebook or Minds about this, I've actually been sick this past week. One of my co-workers last week had caught something from his oldest son, who had just recently started kindergarten. A sickness that swung around and started hitting me on Thursday afternoon. It wasn't anything too bad at first, just a slightly congested sinus with some sniffles, but pretty soon it evolved into a full-blown attack of laryngitis, exactly what had happened to my coworker, minus the fact that I didn't have a sore throat. Nevertheless, my voice over the past 5 days has been completely shot. And today is the first day that it has actually been strong enough that I felt good enough to record. As I'm sure you can hear, it's still not 100%, but it's good enough. So today, we're going to get right back on schedule with a video that I kind of decided on a whim I wanted to do after seeing the movie on Saturday. I am speaking, of course, about the new film Venom, starring Tom Hardy. And this video today is going to be my spoiler-free review of the film. Now you might be wondering, GM Dave, why the hell are you reviewing Venom? This is a tabletop gaming channel, not a film review channel. And you're absolutely right. But those of you who have seen my Darling in the Franxx video, or my video on Christie Golden's World of Warcraft Before the Storm novel, know that when I do reviews of movies and books and the like on this channel, excluding the times that I do those to help out a friend, I'm doing so because I think there's something useful that can be found there that can translate over into tabletop games. I believe that is the case with Venom. In particular, the way Tom Hardy portrays the characters of both Eddie Brock and the Venom symbiote itself. So without any further ado, let's get into our brief breakdown of the movie. So my overall thoughts on Venom? I liked it. It was a fine movie. It was a lot of fun to watch. Now, it is definitely not a great movie, and it certainly has its slew of problems that we will touch on in brief here. But suffice it to say, as a fun action romp, and especially in terms of how the characters of Venom and Eddie Brock are portrayed by Tom Hardy, the movie is really good. Tom Hardy in particular absolutely steals the show in this film. As both Eddie Brock and as Venom, he is amazingly fun to watch, and the performances he gives as both characters feels very genuine. Yes, for those of you who did not know, Tom Hardy not only plays Eddie Brock, but he is the voice of the Venom symbiote. And the interactions that they have are absolutely fantastic. The comedy moments hit when they need to hit, the characters play off each other in a great way, and Tom Hardy, unlike a lot of actors who have tried playing against a green screen, really makes it believable when he's facing off against something that isn't actually there. When he's talking to something that isn't actually there. It feels very genuine, it feels very real, and it's a lot of fun to watch. The rest of the cast and supporting characters are all pretty damn good too, though far from perfect. No one really holds a candle to Hardy's performance in this movie, but I would say that the second best performance probably is the villain himself, even though the villain is actually also the biggest problem I have with this movie. Before I get into that though, I want to touch on a couple of the other more central characters, those being Tom Hardy's former lover and the man she starts dating later on. When Eddie Brock and his girlfriend, whose name I honestly can't remember, are initially introduced to each other, their dynamic is fine. Eddie's character has a very particular way of acting. You can tell he's very egotistical, very self-centered, very full of himself. He's a bold kind of person, and that really shows. Her character is a little more bland, she's a little more level-headed. She certainly has her quips and her snark, but all in all, the chemistry between the two doesn't really feel entirely believable. Tom Hardy gives his all to make that work, but the actress, again, I unfortunately cannot remember her name. I am terrible with remembering the names of most actors and actresses, but she doesn't do nearly as good a job in that respect. She's still a perfectly fine actor, her performance is fine, and she does have a couple good moments throughout the movie, one in particular that is incredibly entertaining that happens in the later segment of the movie. But all in all, her character, I don't really buy her being in a relationship with Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock. When they were together, it didn't really feel believable. Their relationship that they had outside of that time didn't really feel entirely believable, and it really all stemmed from her, in my opinion. Her boyfriend, on the other hand, is an entirely different case. The relationship that he shares with Eddie Brock is a lot more believable, and I was very pleased to see that it actually broke away from an expected trope. Naturally, when you meet the guy, he falls into that typical situation of, oh, he's Mr. Perfect, he's a doctor, he seems so nice, seems so good. So, of course, we expect it's going to turn out that, oh, yeah, the guy's secretly a piece of shit, he probably hits her and stuff. But no. They make him a genuinely good guy, to the point that I was actually more interested in watching him than I was watching her. The interactions he had with Eddie Brock shows that both as a professional and as someone who respects the work that Eddie did as an investigative reporter, he has a lot of respect for the guy. He's a very nice person, and he acts that way throughout the movie. But this isn't entirely why I say their relationship feels more believable than the relationship Eddie Brock shares with his ex-girlfriend. I say that because there are a few times where it does feel a touch bromancy, at least to me. I'm sure that there's probably a lot of people out there that are going to disagree with that, but the chemistry between these two actors just felt a little more real than between Tom Hardy and the actress, or even between the doctor and his ex-girlfriend. And speaking of one last time on the relationship that Eddie Brock shares with his ex-girlfriend, one other thing they do in this film that is really nice is they actually give a legitimately good reason for her to have broken up with him. It isn't a liar-revealed misunderstanding sort of scenario. Eddie actively breaks her trust in a major way and costs her in a major way as well. I won't say any more than that. Suffice it to say, when you see the movie, if you haven't already, you'll understand what I'm talking about when it comes around. But, of course, there is one other character that we need to touch on in this movie, and that is the villain, the one whom I've not mentioned yet. Now, like Eddie Brock, the villain is a twofold experience. He, too, ends up with a symbiote of his own because, well, naturally, there's 4 symbiotes in the movie. 2 of them end up fighting. We've already seen this in the trailers. We know Venom fights another symbiote. The thing is, though, the symbiote character is an afterthought for pretty much the entirety of the movie except the final act. Excluding the film's opening sequence, the final act is the only time where the enemy symbiote really comes into play. Throughout the majority of the movie, the primary antagonist is Carlton Drake, a Silicon Valley tech mogul who founded the Life Foundation, an organization that is engaged in multiple save-the-world-style projects and whose current aim is to send advanced rockets into space to explore new potential areas for humans to colonize in the wake of planet Earth, quote-unquote, dying. Yeah, he's one of those kind of villains, the sort of pseudo-eco-terrorist, power-mad, wealthy young guy who wants to change the world by force into how he thinks it should be, wants to force human evolution, literally, with the symbiotes, so on and so forth. As a depiction of that type of character, the actor playing Carlton Drake does a fantastic job. I 100% believe that he is an egotistical Silicon Valley tech mogul with a lot of money at his disposal that he can throw at dangerous resources to accomplish what he wants in whatever way he wants to. Ethics be damned. The real problem with his character, though, just simply comes from the fact that as a villain, I don't really buy him as all that much of a threat to Eddie Brock or Venom. Yeah, he is definitely a threat, he definitely poses a danger to Eddie and the people around him, but the Venom symbiote is just so strong compared to what Carlton Drake is able to throw at Eddie and Venom that it sort of undermines his strength as a villain. What little there is, and believe me, there is very little. Really, he just feels like too much of a pissy little weasel to be a believable, intimidating villain. The moments where Carlton Drake is meant to come across as frightening and intimidating, the moments where he throws around his influence and financial power, are undermined by the fact that the character isn't really written particularly well, and that this particular kind of character is just not a particularly fitting choice as a villain for a comic book action thriller like Venom. This is improved slightly when the antagonistic symbiote finally does fuse with him in the third act of the movie, but apart from a couple cutaways to some kind of neat kill scenes involving Riot, he has had no build-up up to that point. His personality hasn't been built on. Really, there's just not much to him. So he doesn't really provide anything interesting on the character front either, other than the fact that we know he doesn't like Venom, Venom doesn't like him, and Riot wants to bring more symbiotes to Earth to take it over and colonize it. And that's really where the movie's biggest failings lies, in the villains. Riot doesn't really get enough screen time or attention to be particularly interesting. He's really more of just a plot point with a little bit of snark and a bit of a superiority complex. And Carlton Drake, while portrayed wonderfully as that kind of egotistical Silicon Valley tech mogul, he's just not the right kind of villain for this movie. He's just not very interesting. It's a damn good thing that Hardy's performance carries so damn well, because the people around him, even the better people around him and the better written characters around him, they wouldn't have been enough to make this movie work if Hardy had decided not to bring his A game to the material. I'm very thankful for the fact that he did, because really, in many ways, Tom Hardy's performance absolutely saves this movie. But it is fortunate that I can say that Tom Hardy's performance is not the only thing that saves this movie. There are other aspects of it that do work very well, namely the visual effects and the action. The action in this movie is fantastic. It's well-paced, easy to understand, and flows at a very steady rhythm that never gets boring. As a matter of fact, the entire movie kind of flows at this steady rhythm that never gets boring. When the movie wrapped up, I only felt as I'd been sitting there for an hour and 15 minutes because everything moved at such a smooth pace. Never once did I feel lost. Never once did I feel bored. Everything was evenly paced and very entertaining, even the parts that didn't work quite as well as they could have. But the action in particular is something that really is done well in this movie. It's easy to tell what's going on. It was never confusing. The shots were clear, even in the darker shots or shots that weren't quite as well lit. It was still easy to tell what was going on. I never once felt lost watching an action sequence in this movie. And for the life of me, I can't remember a single instance of shaky cam either, which, thank God for that. That is such an overused trope. I am so sick of seeing shaky cam. Thank you, Venom, for, at least as far as I can remember, not really using it. The other part of the movie that helps save it from its weaker portions is the visuals. The symbiotes look fantastic. Venom and Riot are amazing to look at on the screen. Seeing the variety of things that these symbiotes can do with their semi-fluid forms and their ability to shapeshift in many different ways is incredibly entertaining. And there are some really cool highlight moments in the fight between Venom and Riot during the movie's third act. I won't spoil anything for you, but suffice it to say, seeing this fight on the big screen is definitely worth your time and your money. The camera work is all handled pretty well, too. There's nothing incredibly fancy or stand out in the way the shots are done, but as I said earlier, everything is clear, it's easy to follow, you can definitely tell what is going on, and a large part of that is due to the good camera work in the film. It's nothing new, it's nothing spectacular, but for what they needed to accomplish, they absolutely accomplished it. And thus, we reach the end of my review for Venom, and we move on to now why I thought it was so worth talking about. Well, the reason why I thought this was worth talking about is due entirely to Tom Hardy's performance as Eddie Brock and Venom. One type of character that I have seen players try and fail to do on just about every occasion that they've tried it is the character with either a split personality or a being of some kind living inside them, some sort of second voice that they have, a second personality, a second creature, whatever it may be. The performance that Tom Hardy gives as Venom and Eddie Brock, though, the interplay that the characters have, stands as a great example of how to do this sort of relationship right. It's a great movie to look towards if you want to get an idea of what you can start building from, where you can start building from, and what to build off of, what elements to look for. If you want to make the kind of character that has either the dual personality situation going on, or maybe they have some kind of creature living inside them as well. Perhaps you're pulling a Naruto and you have a demon living inside you, but instead of a mindless, ravening demon fox, it's something intelligent that can speak to you. Or maybe you're going to be playing a game where you actually can have a symbiote-like creature similar to Venom living in your character's body. Something like Savage Worlds or Mutants and Masterminds, where something like that can easily be achieved. If you want to do something where you're going to have the dual character situation going on with the single character you're playing, watch Venom. It's a fantastic example of how to do that in an action-adventure kind of setting, and Tom Hardy's performance as both characters, the interplay they have, the natural chemistry they have with each other, and the believability of their relationship is really what makes this work. So absolutely, if you're thinking of playing or making a character like this, be you player or GM, watch Venom, take some notes from Tom Hardy's portrayal of the character. It's a great place to start if you want to begin exploring that concept. That's about all I've got for you today, friends and gamers. What are your thoughts on my review of Venom? Have you seen the movie yet, and did you like it? And do you think that it does stand as a good example of how to approach the dual personality kind of character or two-in-one kind of character type that some players like to experiment with, but really kind of have some problems getting off the ground? Personally, as I said, I think Tom Hardy's performance as both Eddie Brock and Venom and the interplay they share stand as a fantastic example of this, particularly considering that this is a contemporary adventure, action, thriller kind of setting. It's a comic book movie, and comic books, as we well know from many different kinds of tabletop games out there, lend themselves well to tabletop gaming settings. So naturally, yeah, Tom Hardy's performance in there, I think it's a great place to look, but I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and you found it useful, please feel free to hit that like button. And while you're down there, consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification icon if you'd like to see more. Also, make sure to open that description box and follow me on social media. The links are in the description down below. It's the best way to get notified of when I post new videos. You can find me on Facebook, Minds, Gab, and Twitter. I post notifications on all of those platforms when new videos go live. So make sure to follow me down there if you want the most consistent source of notifications. Furthermore, while you're down there, please consider subscribing to my BitChute channel as well, and following the link to my Patreon to donate if you like what I do and you'd like to support me financially. Even a donation as small as $1 is incredibly helpful to me for this channel and helping it grow. And now the Halloween season is upon us, friends and gamers, and going forward from here, we're going to be getting a little more spooky scary with some of our content. The Halloween season, for those of you who don't know, is my favorite time of year, and I plan to get fully invested in this wonderful month and this wonderful season with themed content for all of you going forward up through Halloween. So keep your eyes open for that. And as always, friends and gamers of all stripes, my name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, and as usual, it is my sincere hope that you continue to roll high, roleplay well, and game on.